ADHD Rewired, episode 495. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. I am here with our panel of panelists. We're going to be answering your questions. So let me introduce who we have here that is going to be helping us answer your questions. We have in my top left corner, which is not applicable if you're listening to this on the podcast, Coach Kristen Martz. Hello, Kristen.
Hello. Didn't know you were coming to me first. I was trying to get my notebook together.
All right. In good form.
Good to see everyone.
All right. And then in my top right corner, I have my executive assistant, Lisa Ciesla, our in-house Dr. Seuss character. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, boss and everyone. How are we doing today? Happy Tuesday.
Doing great. And below Kristen, I keep saying visually. It's for me. It gives me that reference. We have Laura. How you doing, Laura?
Great. And showing up directly to your right if we're doing that.
Oh, we're in different orders then. Okay. Then next to you is Faisal. Hello, Faisal. How you doing?
Hello. I'm glad I'm here. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Faisal is one of our alumni. He's also a drug and alcohol counselor. So glad to have him joining us today as a guest panelist. And then to my right, we have Coach Brian Entler. Hello, Brian.
Good morning, Eric and Laura and Faisal and Lisa and Kristen and everyone at home.
Hello. All right. Now, the star of the show, we have Derek, who's going to be asking our first question. And what is your question?
Thank you so much, Eric, for taking my question and for the panelists that are going to give some advice to this. Been listening for a little while and really appreciate the podcast. I'm 54, just got diagnosed in February with ADHD, got to my diagnosis by way of being diagnosed with depression and anxiety 2 years ago. And through my career, I've been able to kind of cobble together a career in education, but typical ADHD, or I've hopped around from school to school and district to district. So it looks pretty awful. But I've been doing it for 20 plus years, and I want to use my skills to do what you guys are doing. I want to help others. That's why I got into education, was to help kiddos and to help adults. And now I want to use my experience as an ADHDer to coach others. But I feel totally stuck. I think part of it is obviously my ADHD brain. And some of it is where I'm at currently in my current job, which I can't stand. I'm underemployed and underpaid. So any advice you guys can give would be very helpful.
I'm interested to know what you can't stand about your current job.
I think it's some menial tasks, like not interacting with people. But right now I work for a nonprofit where I screen pre-K kiddos for developmental delays, and doing the observations and screening the kids is great. But we go through a thing for a week called processing, where all we do is kind of do computer data entry stuff, and it's really boring. And management tried to fire me before I got diagnosed. I was actually in a meeting with HR and my manager when they tried to fire me and let me go. And I brought up IDA and said, I don't think you can fire me. And they were like, we'll have to get back to you. And they decided not to fire me. But there's a lot of pressure, I think, there that I constantly feel like they're looking for ways to terminate my employment.
I think a lot of us can relate to that experience. I know I've definitely been there. Usually I have to just, when I've worked for others, I disclosed my ADHD when the writing was on the wall that I might be getting fired because I was either behind on reports or paperwork. And it was always the paperwork and report stuff. It was never the actual work, the client work. But that is part of the client work, is that paperwork, which
That's right.
which was a helpful reframe for me to kind of think about, but didn't really make it that much easier.
Right.
Well, it sounds like while you're in a bit of this high pressure situation, because you probably feel like you're being sort of looked at under a microscope right now. Kudos for you for that advocacy piece and holding on to the job. So let me ask you this: you said you wanted to use coaching, help other people with ADHD. If someone came to you and with the exact issue that you just came to us with, how would you respond to them?
Well, I feel like I have the skills to do the coaching. I mean, part of my job already is to coach teachers. And as a elementary school teacher, I feel like a lot of what I did was coaching kids through what they needed to get through. The piece that I feel like I'm missing, and probably if I was talking to myself, is the kind of the intervention piece. Like, I'm still learning all of this about my own ADHD, and I'm kind of using my hyper focus to do all the things that I need to learn for myself. But feeling stuck, like I tried to put my thoughts to paper, tried to put things together for a website, and being able to sit down and do that is been a struggle. And I don't know if it's because I'm burning all my energy at work, and then when I try to do this personal stuff on the side, my brain's just too tired to do it.
Kristen?
Hi, Derek. I did hear, you don't like the paperwork. And again, that comes with the job. I've been fired over a single, after warning, but been fired over a single document not getting turned in on time. And Eric, let's reframe that statement. We do the paperwork just fine. It's about the timeliness every time. So, it's more about that. So I heard that part. But I think what I heard more of is sounds like you hate the job. It sounds like you hate the employer, like the employment environment you're in right now. And so it made me want to flip to this question. What do you love about the work you do?
Interacting with the teachers and the kiddos, that's the best part of the job.
Okay. So I'm curious, where is a direction you could go that would maybe weave those two things together? Interactions with teachers, interactions with kids, that has to do with a coaching, kind of a coaching road.
And I've brought that up to my manager because part of our job description and part of what the training that they've sent us to is to become coaches. So I have a coaching certificate, not from like a JST or that type of organization, but from the University of Florida. And it's mostly geared towards like coaching teachers, but a lot of it still applies to coaching anybody.
So how much say do you have in how your work days go in the job you're currently in?
So I brought it up to my manager. I said, we're not getting enough time to coach these teachers. We're evaluating them and telling them where they're not doing so great a job, but then we're not following up with them to give them any tools or advice or anything like that. And she said, you're absolutely right. And she wants us to move in that direction as a department, but we're all overloaded with all the other stuff that is already a part of our job description. I've been there. This is a year and a half, and we haven't done any coaching really whatsoever.
Yeah. Sounds like you haven't done the work that would move things forward. That was probably the seed for the job that you're doing,
Right.
Of why do we need this job? That is difficult. It makes it sound like I wonder how much trouble you have activating to want to go to work in the morning because many different things you're not enjoying.
Yeah, it's tough going to work every day. There's been days where I've just cried myself to work, It sucks.
I did want to ask you, Derek. So you kind of made this side comment of like trying to figure out how to apply the skills that you want to be doing. And you mentioned like a website. part of your stuck because like, you're trying to start a business?
Yeah, I figured what I really want to do, I feel like I'm not good at working for other people anymore. I think that's pretty clear. I want to do things the way that I believe they should be done. And so I feel like when I tether myself to an employer, I have to play by their rules.
Yeah.
And their rules don't fit my neurodiverse brain. And so I want to do things my way and help people the way I believe that they should be helped. So I feel like being my own boss is the way to go. And I've been my own boss a couple of times, but I think because of my ADHD, I've had some failures there in the past, businesses that failed. So I think part of it is also the fear of starting something new.
So Derek, you said some businesses have failed. What did you learn from those failures?
Not to move too fast.
Okay.
Because of my ADHD. I really see the big picture in things. And so I can connect all those dots. I love the design process, the creative process. So I'm all about business cards and websites and all that kind of stuff, and not going through the basics.
Okay.
Going too fast.
So just be mindful that like you had this business, you had some failures in it, but from what I'm hearing is you learn from those failures. So I look at that as that's not failure, that's called learning. What's that quote? I think by I think it's Zig Ziglar. The moment we learn from a failure, it ceases to be one.
Yes, I believe that's exactly right, and I taught that to my students. Always growth mindset, being kind to one another is a big theme throughout my career.
Do you find yourself getting stuck because to start a business, there are probably 1,001 different tasks that need to be taken care of?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's that, and knowing somebody that's done it, I think would be helpful. Somebody that's more of a mentor, kind of be like, hey, these are the things that you kind of need to do to step forward.
Brian, go ahead. And then we're going to go on to our next question.
Well, I was going to chime in on Derek's side comment. Derek, you mentioned that you were struggling to find time to do these tasks to get your business started outside of work. And you were wondering, is work consuming all of my mental energy? Probably yes. But I'm curious, or there might also be, other issues like you mentioned that you had some emotional baggage because you've had businesses fail before that might be playing into some procrastination. I'm wondering, what is your approach currently to making time and space to do those tasks outside of work?
Oh, no process.
Okay.
There is a process there. It's kind of flying by the seat of my pants right now. I think that's
fine.
Valid.
I call that starting from the ground floor, which is totally fine. We are going to build from there. Yeah, we have a concept in our coaching programs called important but not urgent, or an IBNU, which are things that we need to do that are important to do, but no one is coming after us to make us to do. There's no urgency, so there's harder for us to activate on them. For example, if you're not doing something at work, your boss or your coworker is going to come hold you accountable. But if your real goal is to start a business on the side or seek a different job, no one is going to come after you to make sure you're doing all those tasks. So as an ADHD person, there's a lot of skills and a lot of the approaches we can do where we can build structure in there for us, engineer that urgency. I know we're just going to cast a net wide here because we don't have a super amount of time, but if you were going to think of, if someone else was in the same position, I'm going to copy Eric here. If someone else told you they were struggling to find time to work on this stuff outside of work, what advice would you give them to carve out time for that? Also, not just time, but time and energy when you're actually time when you are present enough mentally to actually make something happen.
I'm sorry. Can you restate that?
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know that was really fast. How would you, if someone else presented you the same problem that they were trying to do stuff outside of work and they couldn't feel like they could ever find the time, what advice would you give them? What ways do you think would work for you to carve out time to do this stuff?
Finding the time that my energy is high, when I work the best, which I feel like I know I'm a morning person.
Okay.
I like to get up and do things in the morning. I feel like that's when my brain is the freshest, and by the afternoon my brain is pretty fried. But part of it is I used to be able to get up like at the crack of dawn as a teacher to be, with kiddos by 7. Since the pandemic and since this life that I'm kind of living now, I go in later, but I only get up enough time just to get to the office. I'm not spending any of my morning time with stuff that's for me, really.
Okay, great. Well, it sounds like you were a morning person at one point in time. Do you think it would be possible to maybe get back to that? Because first of all, being a morning person at one point in time puts you well ahead of a lot of ADHD people. So you consider you've got that experience already under your belt. Is there any way we could revive that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not quite sure how, but I believe it's possible. I think something that would help, and I've been looking at this a little bit, is I used to journal more in the morning. So getting back to journaling would be helpful, getting my thoughts out on paper.
Great. I think that would be a great place to start. Carving out a little bit of time just to journal in the morning and get your thoughts coherent. And I think everything else might come from that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you for your question and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to Juan.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Juan, what is your question?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Super happy to be here. First time. I've been listening to the podcast for a while, and I really love it. The interviews. I was listening to the interview with Russell Ramsey a couple of days ago, the Rethinking Adult ADHD. Amazing. I'm super inspired by that. Okay, so my question is about entrepreneurship and ADHD. I'm a psychologist. I was diagnosed back in 2008 when I was finishing my undergraduate degree, and ever since, I got obsessed with ADHD, and I studied all I could find about it. And in the end, I specialized in ADHD, and I've been working with people, patients. And the thing is, for a number of years, I've been doing online courses, and I used to have a membership and things like that. But for a couple of years, I've been lost, and because I have way too many options, and I noticed that a lot of details and stuff related to my work were falling how do you say, on the cracks when you stop tracking things, little details, things like that. So that's when I decided that I needed some help, and I went back to see my doctor, and I'm on Concerta again, which I haven't had for a number of years. That's pretty much the situation. So I want to ask about how can I find more clarity and choose something that's going to be really powerful so I can follow that instead of doing way too many things. I have many different projects to choose from, So
your question is, how do you decide where to focus in your business when you have so many different options and sort of paths you can take? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing I would think about is your values. What do you value? What's kind of most important to you?
I love learning new things and teaching things and helping people.
Faisal, go ahead.
Yeah, I also find values to be really important place to start. I like to follow that up with asking, what do you see yourself as in 3 months from now? Just seeing that end goal gives some idea of what are things that stand out. What are those values that are standing out for you?
Looking.
What does that sound like to you?
Okay, you mean looking 3 months from now?
Who do you want to be 3 months from now? Yes, that's the question.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not sure.
How about 3 days from now?
3 days? Okay. So I'm working on a new course for my colleagues where I'm going to teach them some tools. So I hope by that time, in 3 days, I'll have the first class almost ready because it's for Saturday. So
okay, so you like to create content.
Oh yeah, I love that. But it's difficult, it's a huge struggle to overcome procrastination, because I love doing it, but it's really hard to start doing it because I have way too many other things to do,
Is the issue of you have too many ideas for content creation, or is it bigger than that?
It's bigger because listening to your podcast, I would love to have my own podcast. I would love to have a better presence on YouTube. I would love to, remodel my website. And I've been, other than teaching adults with ADHD how to improve their lives, I also created a course about digital marketing for colleagues, and that was amazing. I was super excited about that. But you know what? In the process of keeping on doing those type of things, after a while, I get bored and I don't want to keep on doing them. And especially so when it fails to meet my expectations. When the business side of things, it starts to, go down because it happens eventually.
Yeah.
I get frustrated and bored, and I don't know what to do. So that's why I'm a little lost.
Well, Juana, as someone who's been kind of doing virtually the same thing for the last 10 years, I feel that, and I experience that too. I have to be really kind of mindful of how do I sort of add sort of that mental stimulation. I used to do this all the time with presentations where I would literally like recreate these presentations at the last minute just because I was bored of them, even though the people who I was presenting to like hadn't even heard them yet. So that part of that, the challenge can be sticking with something and continuing to do it and refine it. Because it's usually that first sort of iteration, second, third iteration. Those are like the part where it is kind of more fun, right? And then it's more of like, okay, we're kind of going through the things. I think that if you can identify what you think could have the greatest impact and still have some level of what you find to be fun to keep your brain engaged, I think that could be really, really helpful. Because I think what happens is someone creates something and then they're like, okay, that's done. Let's move on to the next thing. Or like the real like value from business is how do you market it? How do you get this in front of more and more people? Let's ask our marketing expert here, Laura. What are your thoughts on this one?
I don't know that I was specifically going to go down the marketing path on this one, but what I wanted to hone in on is that I hear a whole lot of excitement in your voice right now when talking about this stuff. And I think something that can be really confusing is that when we get really excited about all of these things that we can do, that can get really overwhelming, and we might not even register that that's overwhelm because we're so excited. I think looking at everything that you want to do as a possibility, that in the back of your head, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed, even if you haven't put your finger on that yet, that can actually lead to some feelings of numbness when we get too overwhelmed and we aren't dealing with it. And that can feel like boredom. We can convince ourselves that that is boredom and that we want to back away from this thing and figure out another way to recenter and a new thing to be really excited about. I keep using the metaphor lately of having our fingers in too many pies, and Eric is going to make a face now, and figuring out which pies we want to have our fingers in is really important, because if we think about this, actually, literally, we only have 10 fingers, and how many pies can we actually stick our fingers in at once? Literally, there's only so much space on a table.
If you want a finger for each pie, that's your little like single serving, little bite-sized pies.
Okay, so we got to do some baking at Chad. That's good to know. But in any case, I think figuring out which pies you really want to be focusing on is incredibly important, and shoving the other pies to the back so that we can reduce the feelings of overwhelm, which then will stoke the feelings of excitement further instead of breeding feelings of boredom or what we are interpreting as boredom, when in fact our brain might be just kind of trying to keep you safe and saying, hey, let's drop this. This doesn't feel good.
And one of the sort of the ironies of really trying to stay really focused on it and on like one or maybe two things is that once you start, and this has been my experience, all of these sort of strategies that we really need to learn for managing our ADHD, we actually don't need to use them as frequently, and they're not as critical when you are really in sort of that routine of you figured out the process, like when something needs to happen by a certain time, right? And so you're creating systems. Creating systems allows us to free up so much executive function, right? It's just that we're not dealing with the newness or the novelty that our brain loves. Laura, go ahead.
I forgot the last little bit here. Surprise. Feeding right off of what Eric just said, I think that finding what the feeling of satisfaction looks like for you and getting familiar with that feeling can really help as a driving factor, because once you have experienced satisfaction of finishing things, that can really multiply and be a driving force in the future.
Juan, is that helpful for you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. And best of luck to you. And, if you're looking for some accountability, we know of a program that helps with that. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we have more answers for your questions. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our award-winning intensive coaching and accountability groups. We meet 3 times a week for 10 weeks with available peer mentors and ongoing accountability. Learn more at coachingrewired.com. We're almost halfway through our summer sessions, which means registration for our fall season is coming up starting on October 12th. So mark your calendars. I know that might seem a little ways away, so if you want to get registered early, we're offering a big kickoff registration promo. If you join us for our fall registration kickoff events on August 17th, you could take advantage of a one-time only $800 off promo of sections 1 and 3. That's only if you join us on Thursday, August 17th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 Eastern. Get a head start on your pre-registration so you can take advantage of our one-time only $800 promo off sections 1 and 3 by adding your name to our fall interest list at coachingrewired.com. Registration is by invitation only, so once you've added your name, we'll be emailing you instructions on what you'll need to do so you can join us. Make sure you are on our interest list at coachingrewired.com. We've been doing this since 2014. Come grow with us. That's coachingrewired.com. All right, we are back and we have a question from Zoe. So Zoe, go ahead and unmute yourself. And what is your question?
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm a mother. I have 2 kids. Both of them are under 4. The younger one is 7 months old, and he had kind of a rocky beginning. He was in the NICU for a little while. He's doing great. But a couple years ago, started a new freelance writing career. It's been going pretty well. Like, it's ups and downs. But since the baby number 2 arrived, I just feel like it's impossible to get back into the groove, even though I have childcare help. I'm in a pretty privileged position in a lot of ways, but it's been difficult for me to feel like invested in my goals. And I don't know if I need to like push through and try to reconnect with that, or if I need to just be patient. Is it just that like, I kind of want to push against the idea that like when you have little kids, you can't get anything done and your life is just a mess, because that's like a terrible place to be, especially after like spending time in my life trying to develop strategies to not have my life be that way. So I am curious to know whether, particularly in the context of the coaching communities, but just in general, like, do you guys have strategies, or do you know of people that have like made it through? And yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Let me ask you this question. If I were to ask, say, 3 people who know you well, would they say that Zoe has a tendency to be kind of hard on herself?
Yes.
Okay, because what I'm hearing is you are a new mom. I mean, there's the whole like baby brain, phrase, because for an actual reason. Let me ask you, how's your sleep?
It's terrible.
Yeah, I could imagine, because you have a 7-month-year-old, right?
And a 3.5-year-old.
And a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know of any parent of a 7-month and a 3.5-year-old that say, yep, I'm getting great sleep and my brain feels great. Right?
Totally.
Like, and I know sometimes it can feel really hard to hear that, because we want the strategies to get, to push through.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to kind of say, you know what, this is a short period of our life, right? And I remember when my son was really young and I was, dealing with some of the similar things, and I had to keep reminding myself, like, this is just for now. My son's going to be 12 in like a month, and it kind of breaks my brain a little bit because I was just holding him in my arms. It felt like last week. And I know there's a lot of cliche things, but it's like the idea that the days seem to last forever, but the years go by so fast.
So fast.
And it's so true. So what are you doing for self-care? I know you said you do have someone that helps out at home.
Yeah.
Which is great.
We do. Yeah.
What else are you doing for self-care?
Great question. I go to physical therapy. I mean, that's like my only self-care. That's kind of hilarious. And I order groceries, which is fun.
It's definitely more fun than going to the store. I'm with you on that.
That's my self-care.
Okay.
Yeah, great. So I think that's important for me to realize that I'm not really doing anything for self-care.
And are you tracking your sleep at all? Like, in a sense, how bad is it?
It's not, it could be worse. I mean, both of my children sleep through the night, but because the little guy has some like medical needs, there have been weeks where like I'm up checking to make sure that he's okay. And like the 3.5-year-old gets sick. And so like last night I slept for like 7 hours, but there are some nights where I just sleep for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
I know some people don't sleep at all though, so it could be worse.
Well, and forget even comparing yourself to anybody else. Like, how are you impacted by, that level of sleep? Right. Yes.
Right.
Are some people
Yeah.
able to function at, very, very little sleep for a certain period of time? Sure.
I think also, my partner, my husband is worse than I am with little sleep. So I end up being the one who takes those night times because I have a greater capacity to continue functioning. I think the comparison thing is something that's really hard for me because I started a writing accountability group a couple of years ago. And there are a couple other people in my writing accountability group who have had babies, and they all seem to be like bouncing back intellectually better than I have.
Were they developing typically, these other babies?
Yeah. I mean, none of them have had I think the NICU thing makes it a little harder.
And that's sort of my next question is, have you been working at all with a therapist to process that trauma? Because that is trauma.
Yeah. I had a mom group, and now I'm seeing a therapist who works with postpartum people.
Okay. Good. So that's self-care.
That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Kristen?
Hi, Zoe. I'm mom to, there are 3 adults now. My oldest is, which a lot of our regular audience listeners know, is severely autistic. The impact that parents with kids with special needs, medical needs, is higher, the level of times that we experience trauma moments for sure, because our hypervigilance is up and that sort of thing. I forgot if you said, do you work a job during the day besides the job of being the mom?
No, I'm
okay.
So, I don't have a 9-to-5 job.
So here's one of my questions. I did not have a 9-to-5 job then either. I taught dance, which allowed for some sort of framework in my day. And that actually sort of helped, is creating some things that you can put in place that will give you a framework. And then when the kids start school, that becomes kind of magical for people with ADHD because it provides you automatic engineered urgency, like getting the kids to school on time and things like that. It is still very impacted by any of the special needs or the medical needs that come about, yet that gives you that. It helped me reflect because I wasn't diagnosed till 44 and then joined the program in 2021. So my kids were pretty much grown, and I did not realize that structure was my sense of planning, and why my life fell apart when they grew up is because I didn't have structure put in place for me. And I've had to learn how to do it. And what I realized is, it gave me a sense of light at the end of the tunnel in different checkpoints throughout the day. Like I knew, oh gosh, until 2:30, all I have to be ready for is a phone call. I don't have to be the one to go make sure my daughter's not running out in the street or, getting out from a locked door or that sort of thing. If there's a way that you can create some sense of calling it like a framework for yourself, and each day doesn't have to be the same, that could be helpful in noticing that light at the end of the tunnel. The other thing I would say, because yes, it goes by very, very quickly, and a lot of this is the hindsight learning that I'm glad you're getting from me, is what do you want your kids to be able to share that they admire most about you? And what kind of role modeling do you want to do for them? Because it does start that early. And so leaning into that value and that kind of value, because our values can shift and vary in the priority as we go through different stages of our life. And so thinking about it in that term of, I'm a young children's mom right now. What is my highest value in this phase of my life? And knowing that it can shift around and it doesn't have to be the be all end all of that's my core value forever. That might be something that's helpful too. And that's all self-care, just having those 5-minute ponders when you do those kind of things.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful. And I bet you are the right mom for those 2 kiddos, that you are the one they need for sure. So good luck. I know that you're going to do great, and I bet you are doing great, and don't be so tough on yourself.
Laura, go ahead.
I can't speak to the parenting part of this, but at the end of the question that you wrote, you mentioned that you didn't know if you had enough bandwidth to participate in our coaching groups. And so I can speak to this piece. Within our coaching groups, so many people see so much change in an incredibly short period of time. And it is because of that same scaffolding that Kristen was talking about, how we have time constraints suddenly. And so people are working around that scaffolding to make things happen. And keep in mind, we're doing 3 sessions a week. And then you also have 18 meetings. So that's a large time commitment right there. And then beyond the time constraints, you're also learning new skills, which helps push you forward in the things that you're trying to do. And you've got the social support. So you've got these basically a 3-pronged system right there to push you forward. And we see so much change in such a short period of time. And it's hilarious because people will say, I got more done during this coaching group than I've managed to do in the last year. And it is because of having these forms of support and these new tools. So if you're worried about bandwidth, I would actually say that I feel that the coaching group helped me mete out my energy over time during the coaching group. And I wasn't just, addressing the first thing that came up because I did have to prioritize what was going on in my life during that period of time. And I just wanted to mention also on the front of self-care, participating in any therapy or any coaching is a form of self-care. You are taking care of yourself by doing these things. You're participating in deep self-examination, and you're building ties with other people, which to me, the other people are the very most important part of any life change. We can get all the skills we want, but without that community, it doesn't mean a whole lot.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks for that, Laura. I have one other question real quick. Do you have boundaries around the hours in the day that you are trying to get work done?
Yes, but there are a lot of things, sort of. I mean, I think there are things that are competing. I have done a better job at certain times delineating my time. There's no one who's like I'm in charge of my time, but I have to do a lot of home admin stuff and then also take the baby to doctor's appointments, therapy appointments, that kind of things. And sometimes I don't carve out the time for the non-mom stuff.
Okay, so if you were to, even if it was, let me see, how many hours a day, ideally, would you like to be doing your freelance work?
I think it would be great if I just had 2 hours a day. I mean, I can get a huge amount done in that amount of time.
So what can you do to protect your focus from any other distraction for that 2-hour window?
I mean, I think part of it is I really just got my home office set up again. I turned the baby's room into the home office, and now I have the guest room is now my home office. So I think part of it is front loading some time on making sure that I have the right space for myself and making it be a space that I want to be in. And then also I think making sure that I'm taking the time to get my morning routine done, doing a good handoff of the baby to the nanny so that I can leave them and not have to go back. Yeah, those are the things that I think I need to do to get free.
Are you allowing yourself to get pulled into other things during those 2 hours of work?
Yeah, sometimes I think so. Mm-hmm.
I want to really, really encourage you to get really fierce on that boundary of when you're doing your those 2 hours of freelance time. Unless the house is on fire, you don't want to be disturbed.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the laundry needs to be changed; it'll let it sit there.
Yeah.
Train your brain to try to focus. And if doing 2 hours of that feels too much, try an hour. Try 30 minutes of uninterrupted, really laser focused work where you don't allow yourself to be interrupted by anything else. And really try to then, from there, increase how long you can actually go for. We talk a lot about time blocking in our coaching groups. We have our members read the book, The One Thing. And in the book, The One Thing, they're like, time block 4 hours of your day for your important but not urgent stuff. And I always tell people, I'm like, okay, so let's take the ideas in theory and let's make it more ADHD friendly. Because I don't know anyone who can actually legitimately, consistently focus for 4 hours, unless they're in hyper focus, and probably by that point we're so in the weeds that we're not even getting the actual work that we need to be doing done. Right. So really protecting that time and seeing if you can go uninterrupted completely for that certain period of time. And self-compassion. I mean, I get it. It's hard when we know these other things we want to be doing, and when we're being mom, we're probably thinking about work, and when we're thinking about being mom. It's let's maybe take a few minutes to focus on our breath before we even do anything.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny. And writers talk a lot about the inner critic and, how the inner critic kind of comes and talks to you and convinces you that you should just stop. But it's funny how sometimes that inner critic, it's not coming in the form of the critic. It's coming in the form of your garden needs to be weeded, or this thing needs to be done today or else. And the weeds will be there tomorrow. And I should just turn that off and focus on what I'm doing. but I feel guilty. Like, it's so silly that I feel guilty that there's bindweed in my garden. But that's what happens. You go down a slippery slope and then you're feeling bad about your flowers.
Maybe you're drawn to that because you also find gardening kind of therapeutic and self-care, and maybe you need more of that.
Oh, sure. I mean, I do love gardening, but
and there's actually there's research that actually shows that having actual like physical interaction with dirt and soil can actually be very helpful for increasing serotonin levels.
That's interesting.
So like I've heard people talk about like gardening without gloves, like let the dirt under your fingernails like really interact with it. Because I find it also to be very, very therapeutic. I actually found myself doing some weeding yesterday when I would think I was supposed to be doing something else.
It is really satisfying, but weeding, and you have to set limits, set boundaries on the weeds.
Well, we got to set boundaries on everything. And that boundaries is kind of it's the key to the freedom that we really want to have about living intentionally. It's about saying no to all the other things so we can choose to say yes to the things that really matter most to us. Because there's all kinds of things that we could be doing, but there's only 24 hours in a day. Right? And hopefully we're getting some sleep during that.
Yes. We love sleep. That's a good reminder too. This is super helpful. I was not expecting the tidbit about gardening, but that's also helpful to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. All right, we're going to take one more quick break, and we'll be back with some more of your questions. We will be right back. Hey there, ADHD ear buddies. Did you know that we hold a live Q&A every second Tuesday of the month? And if you are listening to this early enough on the day it came out, come out and join us live on Zoom and ask your ADHD-related questions. Head on over to rewired.com/events to get registered. That's today on August 8th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And now for a fake ad. Hey there, friend. Have you ever had one of those days where your to-do list feels like a list of good intentions that never really come to fruition? You ever get yourself on a really good streak with planning or exercise or just general adulting, and then suddenly you realize it's been a minute or a month since you last did any of those things that were helping your ADHD? Well, let me tell you, I've been there. This is your favorite podcast host here to share a game changer for all of my ADHD champions out there. Remember when we were kids and bouncing back from failure was as easy as bouncing on a trampoline on a pogo stick? But now it seems like the floor is made of concrete, right? Well, we're about to turn your world upside down, or rather, right side up. Presenting Rubber Pants. Yes, you heard me right, folks. Rubber Pants. Crafted with resilience, flexibility, and a dash of absurdity. These pants are the only ones designed to help you bounce back when you fail. Literally. Fail to finish a report? Bounce back in your rubber pants. Miss a deadline? Whoosh! Watch yourself spring back into action. With Rubber Pants, every stumble is just a prelude to a somersault, and every setback a setup for a comeback. Skeptical? Don't worry. It's not just hot air we're blowing up these pants. Crafted from state-of-the-art flexible polymers, these aren't your run-of-the-mill clown pants, folks. Oh no. They're as stylish as they are bouncy. Whether you're in a board meeting or at a party, Rubber Pants got your back and your front and all the bits in between. So next time your ADHD wins and you've taken a few steps back, step into a brand new pair of rubber pants and bounce right back. And while yes, we're being a bit cheeky here with our non-existent resilience-enhancing rubber pants, you can find real resilience-enhancing support and community right here at ADHD reWired. Through our podcast, Facebook community, Adult Study Hall, which is our low-cost virtual co-working community, and of course, our intensive coaching and accountability groups. So pull up your pants and head on over to ADHDrewired.com to learn more about everything we got going on. And we're back. All right, so we got a question from Fiona, essentially about our coaching groups. Can the groups help people uncover what their goals / wants are? I think not knowing what I want and indecision are my biggest issues. Absolutely. You know, one of the things that, some people come in with ideas of what they want to work on. And I think often for those people who come in with the ideas of what they want to work on, within a few weeks, they realize that they were kind of like, that's not really what they need to work on. And I think part of what makes group so powerful is it's kind of like this, it's an onion peeler that keeps peeling back the stuff to help us really see what really, really matters. And often it's not what you think that matters. So much of what we do is sort of creating kind of a playground for experimentation and trying out different things and sort of exploring what it is that really matters to you. So it's not just about the time management strategy. It's not just about the calendars and to-do lists. It's really about making sure that we are putting things in place in our life that feel good for us. Right? 'Cause life is not about just getting the stuff done on our to-do list. It is so much more than that. And I think that's one of the things that really happens in group. People start to realize, oh, like here's what really matters. Additional thoughts on that? Anyone?
Sorry, I meant to hit the hand button and then I raised my hand. I wanted to jump in to say, I feel I've heard from a lot of ADHDers that ADHD can make it hard for us to figure out what we want because we tend to be people pleasers, and that can stem from trying to go along with, go with the flow and not get scolded as children for being screw ups because we get told we're screw ups a whole lot. So we do try and people please. And we have a habit of trying to make ourselves who the people around us want us to be. We're a little prone to codependency in this way. And so when we realize at whatever point in life that we don't actually really know what we want as an individual, it's incredibly confusing and overwhelming because it feels like we suddenly have the realization that we don't know who we are. Pinpointing that feeling, I think, is a whole new starting point after you get from the what do I want to the who am I? And that for me was a big turning point. And actually, it was a turning point that I hit during the coaching groups when I did realize that the things that I thought I wanted weren't necessarily the things that I realized were incredibly important to me. So whether that's therapy or coaching or journaling or just talking to a really good friend, finding a connection with someone else or deep within yourself, or preferably both, is a really good place to start.
Thanks, Laura. Faisal.
Yeah, I was going to add that group is an experiential learning experience, and you learn from even seeing others go through those questions that you're going through. A lot of the times, like, our biases doesn't allow us to see how we're like doing these things that is like not making it easier for us to move towards success, where like if we see other people how they're resolving those same questions, that gives us like an insight that we wouldn't see otherwise. And so I think that's a very powerful way of also learning in groups.
Thanks, Faisal. Yeah, and there was a follow-up question there, like, well, what happens if the group isn't a good fit? And I think that's, I remember not that long ago, and I signed up for a business sort of accelerator coaching program, and it actually turned out that it wasn't a good fit. But I also learned from that, and I think that yes, I had some regrets about it, but I also learned about it, and I think that I would rather make progress, move forward, and learn something from it than not do anything at all. Because then it's kind of like this idea that, and we talk about this in our coaching groups, is that like if we have this feeling that there's something else that we want to be doing, and we keep sort of ignoring that feeling, and we keep ignoring it, and we keep ignoring it, we're going to get to the end of our life, and we're out of options. Like we can't then say, oh, all we can say is, I wish I would have done that. If we look at what people at the end of their lives regret, it's not the decisions they made. It's usually the things they didn't do but wanted to. So as far as what if the group isn't a good fit, we've had over 1,000 people go through our program. We've only had 12 people out of 1,000 plus who didn't make it through to the very end, which is really an incredible completion rate. So yeah, that's Kristen, you have an additional comment?
Yeah, and to what you just said, there's a variety of reasons too for those 12 people. Not all of them were not a good fit.
Right.
The other point that I want to make about this is when you join this group, we want you to bring life to the group. We want you to customize things and concepts and strategies that we're sharing. So even if there is some element of feeling like it's not a good fit, there is so much in, just packed in that there are going to be things that you can take from it still and find forward progress, I believe. Because I've heard a variety of things from different members. Some members don't choose to stay with the membership community. Some members, it's like, oh my God, this changed my life. That's me. I'm there, and I have friends all across the world now based on the membership community. So there's different levels of what kind of fit it could actually be. So I just wanted to point that out too.
All right. So I hope that was helpful. We do have a little bit more time. We're just looking for a little bit more questions. Unless Laura or Brian or Faisal or Kristen or even Lisa, you have any questions? Y'all are funny.
Speak to systems. Speak to learning how to create a system. I don't have a specific question, but that is something I've been struggling with.
I actually see a kind of a hanging on remnant of a question in the Q&A, also from Fiona. Are there any one-to-one, that's how I'm reading that, with the assigned coach as part of the program? And I'm just going to look at the framing of that question. It's the difference between individual coaching and group coaching. It's really a different world. Group coaching is far, far more effective. When you're working in a group of peers, people who are with you, who have the shared experience, just the commonality and the shared accountability of people like yourselves. I think someone who is not familiar with coaching or hasn't done group coaching before might think, oh, do I get any individualized attention? Of course, everyone in the group will get individualized attention because you are bringing your situations to the whole group. You'll be getting individualized attention from all the members at the same time. But I just want to address the implicit framing in that question is, that group coaching won't be as effective as individual coaching. I think the opposite is true. I think the group coaching is far, far more effective. Eric can speak to that because Eric used to do individual one-on-one work, and he shut that down to engage with the group practice.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I like to say I'm a kind of a sucker for gold stars, and for me, the gold stars were seeing the people I'm working with do well. Even when I was doing intense one-on-one stuff, I was not seeing the same kind of progress that I was doing the group work. And so that is why I transitioned from a clinical practice where I did do some one-on-one coaching as well, but it was a lot of one-on-one therapy to doing all group coaching, because the group it's the synergy of everyone that comes together, and everyone kind of comes in with their own shtick and their own strengths and personalities. And kind of what happens in group is the effect of it is so synergistic and so, what Brian would say, it's experiential learning, right? And so you're going to bring your stuff to group, and we're all learn from each other. I mean, as a coach, I've been doing this for almost 10 years in these coaching groups, and I still learn from our members every season, every single season. I'm like, oh, I never thought about doing that. Like that's amazing. Like, which is also part of the fun of doing group work, which is also in the context of a bigger community that we have, So don't just think that, I hope I get the person who has the I don't know, the letters or the experience. Like, what we do is process oriented, and that's kind of a microcosm for how we want to live life with ADHD. It's not just about having the answers; it's about thinking about the processes that are going to help us develop and create and iterate the life that we're trying to live. Okay, I want to go back, Kristen, to your question, and this will be the final question. About systems. I think that it's important to create systems, not so much in all right, here's this thing I want to do, and now let me create the whole system for it, but create the system as you go. Because I think it's really hard to think 10 steps ahead through a process. But if we have sort of systems in mind through trying to create a systems-based life, as we are doing the things that we want to systemize, then whether it's documenting it, scheduling it, when we're doing that stuff, right, that we want to repeat. So sort of documentation as you're doing the work, as you're going through the stuff that you're wanting to do. Because I think otherwise we forget certain steps. And so it's kind of like systemizing in the rearview mirror. So then when we come back around the block, we have the map for what we want to create. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds too like our technique of breadcrumbing would be very helpful.
Yes.
Because when you go around the block, you might have missed something, and so need to make a note about that and then incorporate it for a stop when you go around the block the next time. Okay, that is very helpful because I love metaphors. It speaks to me so much better. And that when you said go around the block, I was like, oh, think circularly. You're going to keep looping. That actually really helped. Okay, awesome. I
Yeah,
like this.
because I find that creating a system outside of the context that you want to create it for, at least from my experience, I find that I miss too many things, and then like I sort of miss the whole picture of like what I'm trying to actually create. So it's sort of like, to give you a specific example. Let's say you're trying to create templates for emails. So you get let's say you get maybe a certain number of questions that are pretty similar, and you're responding to the same kind of emails pretty often. Instead of like trying to sit in the abstract to create these responses, as you are replying to that individual email, create the template that would be responding to that email and the next one that's very much like that email, right? So I was, even if the responding to that one email would take 5 or 10 minutes, and creating a template for that email would take you an hour or two, it is worth the time, because the more time you spend building out these kinds of systems, the more time that you're going to have to save, because now instead of that one email taking 5 to 10 minutes, it could take 1 minute, because you just uploaded maybe a snippet, maybe using something like Text Expander or something like that. So you're developing the systems using tools and strategies sort of like that.
This is interesting. It sounds more like doing art from a place of natural creation rather than building a house where you have plans and you have to do certain things before and after, in a certain order. That actually frees me up a little bit, because I've been thinking, oh, there's got to be this certain order. And I'm such that person that I love shooting from the hip and doing things spontaneously. So
Me
that
too.
feels really good to think of it that way. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely loved the first, 5 to 6 years of my business where I was just laying down the track as the train was coming constantly, because it didn't affect other people. Like it worked for me, but when we have other people, like, no, we need the system, because otherwise it confuses everybody, right?
Yeah,
but I like
yeah.
that connection to it is more like art, right? Because it's you're leaving that trail for what you're doing. And for me, one of the harder things for me about creating a system is the slowing down to document. That is a harder part of that, right? It's recognizing, my future self is going to really thank me if I do this. Oh, but I just want to get this done, so I can do the next thing, right? So it's the slowing down.
Yeah. I think maybe thinking of it as, I'm going to maybe have to teach someone how to do this. Keep that in my mind as I'm doing. Because a lot of times when we're creating art from just the natural place, we don't want to reproduce it. So This would be art in a different sense. Art I've got to teach to someone else. I like this.
Yeah. And if you're creating this, I think there's a difference to creating a system for yourself versus for somebody else. For somebody else, especially if it's something that you do on the computer, it doesn't even need to be that, but just record it. Grab your phone and record a video of what you need to do, and then you share that. Like, hey, do it like this. I know, like when Lisa started, I did a whole bunch of video screencasts. Like, here's how we do this, this, and that. And so it really forced me to slow down, break down the steps, and then create a model. So instead of her coming to me with a question for every time this thing comes up, it's like, oh, there was a video about that.
Sorry, I just had a whole thought around, okay, I teach dance. Hello. And having a basic structure, when you said teach it to someone else who might do it differently but needs some sort of framework, that's what we do in teaching dance. We teach the steps, but then we choreograph, which is the next level. Okay, I'm good now. Thank you.
I love seeing the connections happen. All right. Well, we are out of time. So I want to thank everyone for asking your questions, for being here, for being a part of this. We do this every month. Thank you, Laura and Lisa and Kristen and Brian and Faisal, for joining us today. And hope to catch you next time. Thank you so much. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.